All right. We have just recently exited the evening time, and this is probably the last video before I say goodnight. And I just want to say, I just want to say that I wanted to talk about independence to close off the night, but I wanted to talk about it in two senses. Now, the first sense is I would call my past or when I started. I would say that I created like a wall or a border or a fence around me that was like of independence, and it looked like that I was being a very good boy. Just to be very honest, when I was a kid, I was always perceived to be like a very good boy. Like, oh, he's very well behaved. He does like to joke, but his jokes are kind of harmless and meaningless. And usually he's the one who thinks his jokes are actually funny. Also, but not in general, everywhere I went and everywhere I did, I would literally have people make a point to comment and say, man, like this kid is so like well behaved and so nice. I was actually told that people who were supposed to be like, neighbors and people living around me and stuff, I was always told about how horrible they were as children, or how bad of kids as they were. I'd have people, if I was around and if they had met some kind of crazy kids going crazy, they'd talk about, oh my God, I can't believe this kid is like that. I had people tell me that I had a lot of patience, that they didn't know how I managed the way I did. I had a lot of that happened. So yeah, I was well behaved, but like I said, it was more like a preemptive behavior. Like I always, before I did anything, I made sure that I was kind of in the right. You know what I mean? I always wanted to make sure. And I will admit that at a very young age, I had a bit of I didn't have an adult's mind, but I had a bit of a mature mind, to the point that I just, as far as I understood, children should have been respectful. That's how I thought. That's how I saw things. If you're a child, you should be respectful. And the reason is that you're vulnerable, you're young, and these older people you see, they, like, if you do things properly, older people are supposed to teach you and give you advice to guide you, right? And one of the most key points that I learned as a child was that and it can be multiple teachers within a school, for example, or anywhere you go, you will find that older people will have argument or discussions or arguments within each other with differing opinions. And in that moment, as a child, my choice was either, first of all, was to stay out of it, but listen, because I like to keep my ears open. When I was a kid, I always felt like, as long as I observed and opened my ears and I was observing, that at some point in my life I could reflect on that memory, and that was kind of helping me gain knowledge. Anyways, the point is that whilst listening but staying out of it, as a child, when you have adults disagree, you have an opportunity to basically go with whatever you feel. But it has to be substantial. So you can't go 50-50. You got to go like 92 to 8% if you're doing it. You got to take about 8% from one, and you got to go about 92% from the other one. If it is a fair argument, you should most likely pick, right? If it's unfair, you got to use your judgment. But if it's a fair argument, anyways, that's done. I just want to explain independence as I started and began, and that explains it, right? But going forward, independence now. I found independence now, and yeah, it's one thing to be a crazy adult and do crazy things, but to actually get independence to the point that you are a mature. I mean, I am a middle-aged man at this point. To be a mature middle-aged man, independence for me means like judgment is the biggest thing to biggest key to it. Judgment is the biggest thing. Now, as a child, judgment is very simple, right? And that kind of made things easier for me because I had levels to move up slowly. And at this point, I'd say my judgment is pretty good. I do use my judgment to its best ability. I do want to say that I am rather independent. I mean, the proof, like I've built things on my own. There's things I've learned, and I know people will actually believe that I kind of created some ideas myself and on my own, and made a system on my own and figured it out on my own. It's no different than now. I'm not saying I'm Bill Gates, but Bill Gates designed Windows. He began designing when he was 11 or 12 years old. He already had Windows in the bag when he was like 21, 22 years old as a university student. And yeah, when you actually create something on your own, that's when, for me, that's when independence began. When I started creating things on my own, I was constantly reading, and I was very selective about what I read. I didn't read entire books. I read fact-based books, and then I read and I would go through the chapters and decide which I was gonna read and not read to get the most out of it. There's a tip for you. And finally, yeah, I just pretty much just started figuring things out on my own. And that's when I began to become independent. And at this point, I would say that I'm pretty much on my way to be totally independent. And like I've said, my biggest goal is that in 10 years, my goal in 10 years, in 1 decade, is to be running. So not just owning, but running and owning 4 successful restaurant or hospitality venues, not including hotel. Anyways, I'm going to say goodnight, and I'm going to drop it right here.